I mean, he must have, at some point, come to recognize also sort of, I mean, this is a country where our constitution's only international laws with maritime law, so that the gap is very large, but filled within there, you have descriptions throughout that are of a man who sort of changes roles. If he's talking to you and then he's on the phone, and a completely different person, and he's all over the map, and that's definitely sort of the James Bond part, but the Bobby Kennedy part sort of.
There's a Bobby Kennedy part too, sadly.
Yeah, and it also contains that sort of weight of sort of horrific self-reflection. And did you see instances of that with, say, the comment of, handing out food at the gates of death camps, and things like that, there's a wall at which everything stopped, and as you become more technocratic, that perhaps the consequences become greater, or a sense of complicity. Did he have anything like that?
Well, I think, first of all, you're absolutely right that what made him unusual was not, hugely unusual on the merits, just on all the number of war zones that he was in and the number of killers he negotiated with. That's unprecedented. No one in the UN system or no aid worker has done as much as he has in dangerous places, or did as much as he did. But he also, meanwhile, got 2 PhDs in political philosophy while he was working in these war zones. It's madness. Now, that isn't so relevant because he ended up with the great grand theory that we can all kind of hitch our sails to. Sadly, I don't think he ever got time to really sit down and do that final kind of magnum opus. I'm not sure he was a great philosopher. I'm not sure it would have been memorable if he had done that. But what's important about him being a philosopher and moonlighting as a philosopher in these places is, as you say, he retained a capacity for self-reflection, self-criticism that's, I think, unique. He made an awful lot of mistakes, and I'm unsparing in my discussion of them. I hope I'm unsparing anyway. But unsparing means also giving the context in which he makes them. I would not want his choices. It's Sophie's choice after Sophie's choice after Sophie's choice. It's impossible. But he definitely, I think, himself believes that he, would have done things differently in certain missions. But there are 2 things I credit him with that I think make him very, very different for men or women who are doing this kind of work. One, this capacity for self-criticism and adaptation. And 2, an unfailing regard for dignity, an unbelievable capacity to disaggregate the human in human rights or the human in humanitarian, to see individuals kind of one by one. Really, this shouldn't be something one just, wow, can you believe it? UN High Commissioner for Human Rights actually cares about human beings. But even an Assistant Secretary for Human Rights, even a person in Human Rights Watch, sometimes you just get into the business of it that you cease to see the individuals right in front of your nose. And can I just read? Would you mind if I just read? Because I'll just give you one example of this. It's a very simple passage, not one that would maybe stand out, but this is Sergio in Azerbaijan. On one trip in September 1996 to Azerbaijan, a country that had been at war with Armenia over Nagorno-Karabakh, the deputy foreign minister escorted Vieira de Mello around a sprawling refugee camp. The country was teeming with refugees, as 1 in 8 Azerbaijanis had been displaced by the conflict. The fetid camp was starting to acquire the air of permanence that Vieira de Mello so despised. Individual refugees approached him to share their grievances. He told them that he was meeting with the president of the country later in the day and asked, "Is there a message that I can deliver on your behalf?" At the start of his tour of the camp, he chatted at length with an elderly woman, probably in her late 70s, who described the melancholy she felt at being unable to return to her rural home. He continued speaking with other camp residents, with Azerbaijani officials, and with UN field workers. After an hour, the deputy foreign minister steered him toward the camp exit, where his official limousine waited. Suddenly, just as he was about to enter the vehicle, he stopped. "I need to find that old lady again," he said. The delegation made its way back to the woman's battered tent, where she remained standing outside. "What do you miss the most?" Vieira de Mello asked the woman. "I'm a proud person," she said through a translator. "My whole life I have lived alone, and I've worked the land myself. I've never depended on anybody for anything, and now here I am for 3 years, dependent on handouts from the UN. It's very hard." She looked down at the ground. "And what do you want for yourself?" he asked. She looked straight at him and said simply, "I want to go up into the sky and become a cloud." And then as a cloud, I want to travel through the sky many miles to where my home is. And when I see my land, I want to turn into rain and fall from the sky, landing in the soil so I can remain forever in the place that I belong. Pierre de Mello shook his head in wonder. He knew how unlikely it was that the crisis in Nagorno-Karabakh would be resolved in her lifetime, but he promised he would do what he could. A wounded soul may hurt as much as a wounded body, he often told colleagues. But this fact that, here's his official limousine, there's presidents and foreign ministers and fancy people waiting, and all he wants to do is go and sort of get the key to world peace from this old woman in front of a camp. That's very rare, again, to see the individuals in whose name you're making policy.